Hello, my name is Tayler Rhoades, and I am a graduating senior with a major in anthropology and a minor in nonprofit studies. Like other GPC students, I naturally have tried to be very intentional about having an international focus during my college career. From the classes I have taken to the friendships I have pursued, every experience has offered depth and richness to my understanding of the global community and my place in it. I got something unique out of every experience because every experience gave me a different vantage point to examine facets of other cultures and my relationship to them. A lesson that I have learned throughout this entire process is how important it is not to reduce a culture or a country down to an experience that I have had or information that I know about it. I have come to recognize that the perspective I have is just one of many. One example where this has become very apparent to me was comparing the cultural experience I had studying abroad and the experience of building an international life here in Raleigh. As soon as I got to college, I quickly made studying abroad a major priority for myself. I was eager to use my time at college to see and do as much as I could. I went to Prague, Czech Republic, for the fall of my sophomore year. I learned a lot in Prague, but they were not the lessons I might have expected. I wasn't sure what to anticipate from this experience, but I thought a whole semester might be enough time to really get to know a country and a city. However, when I got there, I didn't always feel like I was getting the cultural immersion I had imagined. Our academic campus was right in the middle of Old Town, but since I lived with and attended classes with all Americans, the majority of which were NC State students, it was difficult to make friendships outside of the group. There were plenty of times where we participated in what was going on with the rest of the city through events like festivals and holidays, but our situation made it difficult to make sustained and meaningful relationships with other Czechs. On the other hand, I have had the inverse experience here on campus. While fulfilling my curricular activity credits for GPC, I have made some really meaningful relationships with a handful of French students from the Schema Business School located on Centennial campus. After being introduced at an international event hosted by the Global Training Initiative, a group of girls and I continued to keep in touch and started making our own plans together. I was adopted into their French community here in Raleigh and have remained a fixture with the core group of girls ever since. It hasn't been uncommon for me to be the only American in a room full of French students. This is not something I had planned or anticipated, but it's something that I am extremely grateful for. I began to wonder which scenario was a more culturally significant and meaningful experience. Living abroad, but only building relationships with other Americans, or living in America and building relationships with a group of international students. I have concluded that it's not fair to compare dissimilar experiences, because as I mentioned at the beginning, each experience has given me something unique and important and helped me develop a richer understanding of others and myself. I have learned that every country, culture, and group of people is dynamic, changing, and internally diverse. As a result, every experience and interaction that I have had has offered more information about different places and groups of people, which has given me a deeper, more multifaceted understanding. Living in Prague taught me to mentally decenter myself. By living and traveling abroad, I was able to better grasp and internalize how truly large the world is. It's one thing to mentally know that the world is a big and diverse place, but it's a whole other to experience that firsthand. It has been a really humbling revelation, but a critical one, because it has helped me to decenter my culture and myself. I think this was a really important perspective to gain early in my college career in order to get the most out of my major in anthropology. It's unrealistic to assume that we can reach true cultural or social objectivity, but as an ethnographer, it is essential to decenter yourself as much as possible and be aware of the biases, personal and social contexts that make up your individual perspective. Overall, study abroad allowed me to reflexively see truths about myself. I got an honest look at how I dealt with stress, how I problem solved, and it exposed my somewhat distorted view of the world. After viewing myself outside of my normal context, I was able to work towards becoming a better global citizen. On the other hand, building meaningful friendships with people from a different country here in Raleigh gave me perspective, richness of experience, and new eyes to see everyday life through. From ideas about eating, drinking, going out, personal space, gender roles, identity, manners, music, humor, and the relationship between the self and other, I have slowly been introduced into different ways of viewing and doing things. This window into a part of French culture has brought me new levels of understanding. I think of my initial perspective on France as flat and only based on indirect experience through history class, film, art, and other secondhand or indirect information, none of which can give an adequate perspective into current life and culture, together or on their own. Allowing yourself to be taught a new way of doing life by others is essential for broader perspective. I think that it's important for students to build relationships with people from different backgrounds for many reasons. It adds depth and richness to your perspective. It changes preconceived notions about others and about yourself. It can be easy to judge or assume things about other people or cultures based on incomplete or inaccurate information. However, making friendships with people from other backgrounds gives a fuller context and new position to look from. It also forces you to see others as human and not a symbol of a political ideology, event, or stereotype. It is easy to misunderstand or be critical when we stop seeing others as people. Relationships make it near impossible to reduce a human being down to something so flat. I think this is such an important lesson to learn if we are going to be an insightful and respectful generation of global citizens. I hope to preserve these friendships that I have made and continue to seek similar ones in the future. Everything that I have done with a multicultural or international focus has shown me how important it is not to reduce others or allow them to be a symbol. For example, my non-Western literature class covered important pillars of Chinese culture, but offered something very different than the time I spent volunteering with New Minds Chinese students on one of their field trips. They both represented a perspective on China and its culture, but in very different ways. Both were worthwhile and enriched my perspective. It is easy and comfortable to choose to surround yourself with people who look and think like you, but I have learned how valuable it can be to push past that and to seek situations where I am in the minority as an American. This can be scary and uncomfortable at first. During my semester in Prague, I made a point of taking a class on Czech language and culture, but this didn't explain to me how bagging at the grocery store worked differently or that it wasn't okay to pet dogs sitting in shops before I had already made those mistakes. I don't speak French very well, and being in a room where everyone around you is speaking in a language you don't understand can be really intimidating. Sometimes people I didn't know would even greet me with la bise, which definitely had me outside my comfort zone. But with every disorienting situation, I bounced back more quickly and felt more confident going forward. Every time I engaged with people, it became more natural and interactions became easier to navigate. These experiences have shown me how to think on my feet, become more personable, and given me the privilege to meet some really exceptional people. Because every experience adds a new perspective and understanding, I hope I still have a lifetime of learning ahead of me.